These are the complete interviews with the subjects for the documentary Encounters. The only editing performed on the footage are camera cuts, sound correction, and minor color corrections.
I had to grab the dog's leash
No problem.
because if anyone walks down the hallway, she can't go very far to the door.
All right, and you said you want to go about 20 minutes and then we'll
Right.
pause, right?
So I can offload onto the computer.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I've got you on. You're on. Let's tell me your name and whether you approve to be on camera.
I'm Gloria Hass, and yes, I do approve to be on camera.
Okay. Well, we're gonna jump right to the right through the hoops and right to to the chase here. Why are we doing this interview?
To let people know that they're not alone and to help lower the stigma. There's just too much stigma around extraterrestrials and aliens. There's still people who don't believe in it, who bully people, make fun of them, and they discount all of the all the experiences because they haven't had it. So therefore it's not true.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense. And we've discussed or we've talked briefly, and I guess we first contacted each other about 2-3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago now, and you're across the country from where I am, so you're the only interview I'm doing via this technique here, but I felt like it was important to get you into this series because not just what you experienced, but it's much more than an experience for you, I guess is the best way to say it. So, again, let's cut to the chase. What about you? What makes you special in this whole thing?
I'm a hybrid. And that was very difficult for me to finally accept. I'm in my mid-60s, and I knew as a child and in my 20s that there was something different, and I was homesick whenever I looked up into the sky, into the stars, and I got to the point of I stopped looking up into the stars because I felt so overwhelmed that I couldn't handle it. I really couldn't.
When did you discover or realize that this was the case?
Well, I grew up in California in the desert, and my dad had dug a swimming pool in the backyard for a doughboy. And he ended up having a heart attack, and he couldn't dig anymore. My brother and I have a brother who was a year and a half older than me. And my dad, I said, well, he says, we're going to have to fill it up. My brother and I go, can we go play in it? My dad goes, yeah. And there's steps to step down in. And my dad said, just make sure to my brother, make sure your sister doesn't hurt herself, being a girl, being actually a tomboy. And we were fans. My dad got us hooked on Star Trek. He was a big Trekkie. He could watch the same episode over and over, tell you what was going to happen, and enjoy it every time. And when it came to Star Trek, it was great. I enjoyed it immensely. I didn't care if I sat there and watched the series over and over again. I could relate to some of the characters. I could relate to Leonard Nimoy's character, Mr. Spock. And my brother and I would then go into the swimming pool, and we turned it into a spaceship. And my brother was adopted by my dad, only he never knew it till the day that my brother passed. And I found out afterwards that we were half siblings. But my brother would say, I said, where are we going to go, Captain? Because I didn't play a very good captain. I had to be the assistant. I mean, older brothers have to do everything for little sisters, the commander of the ship. And he says, I'm going to go look for my real family. And he said, I know this isn't mine. It's your family. I said, no, it's not my family. I'm going to go find my family too. My brother started arguing with me and left me in the swimming pool, the empty swimming pool, I should say, so people don't think it's full of water.
Right.
And I just sat there and I looked up into the sky and I just said, beam me up, please. I can't take it anymore. I don't like it here.
Your brother, you said he's your half, or he was your half brother. Was he a hybrid also, though?
No, I'm a hybrid on my father's side of the
Okay.
family.
On the father's side. Okay. And your mother was a hybrid.
I believe she was, but no, I thought she was, but the more I spoke with a relative on my father's side of the family, because we're related through my father's maternal side and her mother's maternal side, I think my father was the hybrid and not my mom. Even though one of my daughters looks like my mother and she's a hybrid.
Now, I have no idea if you can answer this question I'm about to ask or not. Depending on who you talk to, depends on how many species of aliens there are that we've had contact with, that we've had interactions with. Do you know the species, or do you feel like you know the species that you're a hybrid of, or your one of your parents was a hybrid
I believe
of?
it was a gray, because I gave birth to grays, and that's all that I can get out of them. I have spoken with my mate, and he's a gray.
Okay. Now, how do you make contact with the grays, as far as your mate or who? Is this more interdimensional, or is it actual, physical?
It's interdimensional.
Meetups?
I have seen grays in the physical, and but I've mostly been in interdimensional talking telepathically. Easy for you to say.
Well, see, yeah, is it interdimensional or intradimensional? Because I see it both ways.
I just go into the dimensional. That's all I'm going to say. I go into dimensional, and I can even talk with him. I could be laying in bed and I can start a conversation. And I've had 2 of my children come to me, and take me aboard the spaceship recently.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about your children, because you had mentioned not long ago that you found out that they were living.
Yes.
Okay. If you don't mind sharing some of that.
No, I don't mind. I had been married and got pregnant. My first child was a human, and I miscarried. And my husband didn't want any more children because he was older, like 11 years older. And my stepson was 9 years younger. So he didn't.
And this is an
earthly relationship, yes.
Oh, okay, right. I guess we need to clarify some of it.
No, this is an earthly relationship. We got married in a church back east.
I'm glad you can laugh with me.
Oh, I can now. No. And then he had the vasectomy, and he still had a low sperm count. And I had gotten pregnant even using birth control. And we had used the condom. Didn't hold up. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
So we went ahead, and I ended up missing my monthly cycle. And I told him, I said, I'm pregnant. But the pregnancy felt different. And he said, well, he went to the doctor, and he said, I still have low motility. Some motility. So, we went from there. But when I was pregnant with the human child, the baby just felt fine in there. I was 3 months when I lost the child. And then when I found out I was pregnant with my second, third, and fourth pregnancies, it felt like tentacles were latching onto my uterus. And when I thought I had miscarried the baby was when they actually took their implantation and they took the human baby too.
And we're talking about the
Greys,
Greys.
yes.
The Greys
Yes.
took the children.
And I remember the impregnation. That's really bizarre. And then that's where I was levitated above the bed in my bedroom. I was also, that was the third pregnancy, but the second pregnancy, I was on their spaceship on the metal table in a round room with all of these windows. And I would see these really tall Greys dressed in white, and they didn't walk, they floated around the room. And I was sitting on the table and I got off and they said, Gloria, you need to sit back up there. We're not finished yet. So little me, Miss Little Rebel, I started to go out the door and everything you could hear, I could hear a vacuum seal. And they said, you cannot leave, get back on the table now. So I sat back up on the table and I was watching the Greys. They were all watching me. And then the next thing I know, I was at home in bed.
Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, maybe not related to the pregnancy and that type of stuff, but just to get clarification so people can visualize this properly. First of all, the Greys, how tall are they? What's their anatomy like? I know we have the pictures with the big heads, that type thing, but how tall do you think they are?
Well, the Greys I've seen recently are like 3.5 to 4 feet tall, but the ones on the spaceship look like they're 6 to 7 feet tall.
Okay, so these are much taller than. Now, what percentage of their body is their head? Our legs are about half of our size, and then the trunk and head is about half of our size. Is their head maybe 20-30% of the body, or?
Well, it's like the ones that I've seen that are 3.5 to 4 feet tall are like the pictures with the big head and the very skinny body and the long fingers with the bulb tip, because I've had those marks on my arms. And then the ones that I saw on the spaceship, they were wearing almost like masks. It looked like surgical masks and hats. So I couldn't tell you the percentage of their head and then the long gowns. It was almost like they were all one piece in what they were wearing. So, but from what I saw, I would say their head was not that much larger than ours.
And are they, it's depicted a lot that they're emotionless, just kind of plain faces, that type of thing. Do you see emotion come out of them at all, or?
Not them. My youngest son has no emotion. He's matter of fact.
Okay.
My daughter has some emotion, the female hormones.
Okay.
But not much. She's matter of fact, but she's a little more tender and not as, not like a robot.
Right. Now, aliens, the Greys, they do have genders?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Or sexes, or however we need to say it this day and time. I don't know
Genders.
anymore.
Let's just go with gender.
Gender works. When you said that they were floating in the room, in the spaceship, was that due to an ability they have, or was it due to lack of gravity?
They have the ability to levitate. And I used to have the ability to levitate. I stopped levitating.
Which you said you were levitating over the bed.
Right, they had levitated me, but I also remember other times to where I would be sleeping and I'd be levitated above, just like a foot above the bed. But when they did the implantation, they rose me up a couple of 3-4 feet above the bed.
Now, did your husband ever meet the Greys?
No. The interesting part is when we went to see the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and when it came out, we were there with his mom and his son, and we were out in the parking lot waiting for them to come out because his mom wanted to go buy something and his son did too. So we were at the mall, and so we were out by the car, and I looked up into the sky, and I'm in my early 20s, and he said, yeah, I said I had a weird look on my face. He goes, what are you thinking? I said, I'm feeling homesick. And he goes, do you think you're part alien? And I just looked at him and it's like, I didn't even want to go down that road. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. That doesn't exist. And we never spoke about it. He was not a person who would talk about those types of feelings of his beliefs that often. And I believe in our 5-year marriage, I may have known about his religious convictions, and he liked books. And that was about it. He would not go into a deeper level with me at all. And I wished he would have, because it was a boring marriage. And I would ask questions and he would say, I'll read this book instead. He wouldn't talk about it.
Okay. Now, did you tell him about you felt you were?
No. He's the one who approached the subject with me and goes, oh, do you feel like you're part alien?
So he believed that's what happened.
Yeah, because he believed in, apparently, with that, but I will never know because he passed away a few years ago.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. I tell you what, we're at 16 and a half minutes. Let's take a pause. So you can fix that? Let's do that. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to start recording here. I'm already recording on the camera there. And we're at 6:46, so I'll keep the time there. Gloria, let's talk about the pregnancies a little bit. Specifically, I guess, let's go into that 3rd and 4th pregnancy. We discussed a little bit about off camera, so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, let me backtrack to the 2nd pregnancy. After I had, I had forgotten this part, after I miscarried, women can have yeast infections, and they're white and they look like cottage cheese. The infection I had was green and looked like cottage cheese, and it burned. And any part of my skin it touched, it burned, and you could look like a chemical burn. And I went to my gynecologist, and he had never heard of it before. And it took 2 months every week having the cream, vaginal cream, to get rid of it. So at the end of 2 months, and he had never seen anything like it before. So at the end of 2 months, I could then have sexual relations with my husband. And next thing I know, 3 months later, I'm missing, well, actually I started missing my period almost immediately. And then it was and I was like, wait a minute. I asked him, asked my husband, I said, when was the last time you had your sperm count checked? And he said, I think it was like a couple of months, right when I had the infection and everything. He said I was all clear. He goes, well, I saw I'm missing my period. He goes, well, it's not mine. I said, no, I said something else could be going on, because he was the only man that I was intimate with. So then I could tell I was pregnant with how the pregnancy felt. And it was just like, okay, maybe, and in my mind I said, okay, I'm just wishing to be pregnant, right? This isn't really happening, but I could feel that clamped on feeling again. And I'm like, oh God, please no, I really don't want to be pregnant. And
this is where you felt like the tentacles and stuff too?
And I said, there must be something wrong with this baby. And I said, I just really need help here. And the next thing I know, the baby was gone, the tentacle feeling was gone, but the green infection was back. And that took like 4 or 5 months to clear up. And I found out that whenever I had ate chocolate, it came back. Or if I wasn't a coffee drinker, but I could have black or orange pico tea and nothing happened with the caffeine. So, but I did sip coffee one time, my husband had bought some coffee that it smelled really good, and there was the infection. So with chocolate and with coffee, that infection would start again. And
Okay.
after I had my fourth pregnancy, I haven't had any chocolate or anything since. The reproduction organs are all gone, but I don't want to test it.
Right. Now, right. And I'm assuming these aren't immaculate conceptions here. So, do you remember anything, maybe looking back on it now, where alien contact probed?
I was levitated above the bed. I went to sleep with my pajamas on, and here I had like a gray cloth over me, and I was naked underneath. And there were two on one side, one on the other, and one at the foot of where I was, and one behind me. So that's what, 5. So then I just said, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I just go away. Just go. And that's when I woke up feeling that something was different.
Right. Did you have a time loss during this time?
Actually, I was like awake, but I was in my bedroom. So at whatever time it was, I don't remember, because the clock was on my husband's side of the bed, and he was in bed sleeping.
And it was in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it was dark. Yeah. And yes. And whenever I tried to look down, all I could see was vastness. But I could see the bedroom window, and I could see the ceiling.
Now, when we have the Greys that contact you, or did they communicate with you at all during these times?
No, they didn't say anything to me at all. Nothing.
That they were just
there.
They
were just there doing their thing.
Okay. Now, but they have communicated with you since
yes,
then.
Yes, they have.
Now, when they communicate with you, is it in your voice? Is it in a different voice? Is it in an English dialect, or is it just a feeling?
I could hear them in a voice in English. And one day I was walking outside and I heard it audibly, and my dog also heard it. And it sounded like a Slavic language. And I didn't understand it. And
is it a male voice?
It was a
female
male voice.
Okay. Very, like a baritone or and I know I'm getting detailed, but I'm trying to find commonalities.
It was between a baritone and a tenor. It was between that. And I have seen them physically as well.
Okay. Now, you said you have found out that, which of the children are still alive?
My second, third, and all of my alien children are still alive. When they took my child, the human child, I don't know what happened. And I probably, being a mom, I don't want to know.
Right. So but the second, third, and fourth, while it felt like a miscarriage, basically you were just the vessel to handle it early? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, all I heard you say was second, third, and fourth, and then everything froze.
That's fine. I'm going to get everything started back here on my end. All right, so I'm recording here again. The second, third, and fourth child, they felt like a miscarriage, because you only carried him for a few months.
Right, my fourth child,
right?
I was 5 months, and I felt the baby move.
So you're primarily, and I'm gonna call you the human at this point, but as the human, you're the human vessel to start the creation of furthering the hybrids, and then they remove the hybrids. Okay. I'm assuming this was right many years ago. This wasn't yesterday, so.
This was over 40 years ago.
Did you? Right. we didn't have ultrasounds 40 years ago.
40 years ago,
Correct.
we did have ultrasounds, but they didn't use them until.
Did the doctors notice any? Did you do anything
But
like
they
that?
didn't take. They called them sonograms then, and
Okay.
they didn't do that until the woman was like in her 32nd week of pregnancy. And with my 4th pregnancy, I was in my 5th month. I was scheduled to go to the doctor's on that Monday to have an ultrasound done of the baby, and it was that Friday night I went into labor and I had the baby.
Okay. Do you believe that the Greys or the aliens knew what you were doing at that point, and that's one reason it was taken at the weekend
Yes.
before?
Well, it was interesting because after my 3rd pregnancy, I remember saying to myself, I was talking to myself my husband wasn't there, and it was just like he was gone doing something, and I was just in the apartment, and I just said, why can't I at least be pregnant? I just want to feel the baby move. Why can't I ever have, the baby move? That was my only thing. So I believe I was 5 months, and I believe their full term is probably 6 months or 5 or 6 months. So I did feel the baby move. He was quite active. And I remember going into labor, and everything was healthy up to that point. My pregnancy was healthy. The heartbeat was a little different of the baby than what the doctor was used to. And he wanted to also, I was supposed to go to his office on that Monday. Or actually, yeah, he would put the stethoscope on my stomach. And he said, well, everything sounded okay, but it sounded a little off. And that's why he wanted me to go to his office on Monday. And then he was going to put me in the hospital and hospitalize me for the duration of my pregnancy.
Okay. Now, have you had any X-rays yourself or MRIs or anything like that? Is your anatomy different on the inside by being a hybrid?
Yes. I was 18 years old, and of course my mom took me for my first female exam, and the doctor said that my vaginal area is a lot lower, and so is my rectum, than anything he's ever seen before. And when he went to go look inside, he couldn't because it was massive tissue growth. And he said that I would have to have what they call a D&C to clean everything out before I could even have sexual relationships. That's when I was 18. So when my husband and I were going to get married, I had to go into the hospital, and I went into, I hemorrhaged on the table. And the doctor was shocked because everything was fine. Then all of a sudden I started hemorrhaging. And I was in the recovery room, and I came out of recovery within 5 minutes, and the nurse was talking about, we don't know if she's going to make it. And I'm like, are you talking about me? And I scared her and the other nurse. They said, we didn't think you would be coming out, be hours. What do you mean? You've only been in here 5 minutes. And also at times I would come, if I had to have surgery, I'd be coming right out of the anesthesia during the surgery because I could hear him. She's coming out. Yeah.
So the anesthesia doesn't affect you the same. You heal quicker?
I heal a lot quicker. And then when I had my hysterectomy, I was able to go back to work in 4 weeks, even though I didn't feel good. I just felt weak still, but I was able to go back. But the interesting part is with my hysterectomy, when I went after, I had to go to see the doctor. I kept my appointment anyway because I had called him on the phone when I had miscarried the baby. And when he did a female exam, he said everything was completely clean, no tissue left behind, no residue, no nothing, which is unusual. He said he has seen.
So they got the tissue out and you don't even have scarring.
Right. But what I did have was fast and slow growing tumors that the doctor could see. So he sent me to a specialist, and it took 2 months to get in. And the specialist said, you have fast growing and slow growing tumors. I asked him, what does that mean? He said, slow growing is usually fibroid, fast growing is usually cancer. That scared me. You know, here I am in my mid-20s. And then after I had the surgery, they hurried up and made the, my mom couldn't come take care of me, so I had to wait another 3 months to have surgery. But meanwhile, when I had my menstrual cycle, everything burned coming out, and I hemorrhaged. I would wear the extra thick sanitary pads and go through 3 of them in about.
Now, is this back in what, the 80s, 70s or 80s?
The 70s.
70s?
No,
Okay.
early 80s.
Early
Late,
80s? Okay.
yeah, I think it was like 1981. I'm not sure. That's a trick question. No, but when I went into the, had to have the hysterectomy, my gynecologist had told me, Dr. Doradai had said that he put his hand underneath my uterus to lightly lift it up, and it came right out with all except like a string of tissue. And he said it shouldn't have, but it was 10 pounds of tumors. All
Wow.
were fibroid, no cancer.
Wow. Well, I don't know where I want to go with this next question.
Well, actually, if people want to know, I did see my baby born, and there was somebody there.
Okay.
Because I had went and sat on the toilet. I felt my water break, and when me and the other person looked in the toilet, it looked like we were looking at a chicken, and he had gray hair, his skin was gray, and he had the big black eyes. And then he vanished.
Was the head larger than the
Yes.
body?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
Because I imagine a baby gray or a baby hybrid doesn't quite look the same as an infant human.
No, to me, the way that he was curled up reminded me of a chicken with a huge head. And,
Okay.
you know, the scrawny, skinny body.
Right.
And it was weird to see, you know, the big black eyes. And then we both watched the baby disappear. And that freaked him out,
Okay.
freaked
Did
me out.
When you say it disappeared, did it just like phase out, or did
It was gone.
glitch
In the blink
out,
of an
or-
eye, it was gone. And
Okay. They just
Yep.
snap, gone.
they took him.
The how I know that you've told me, I think we said it off camera, you told me that you can't really call the aliens and I don't know what term you want me to use. You want me to use grays or aliens?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. That you can't really call them in, but they come to see you when they want to. How often do you see aliens or have communication
More
with
than I
aliens?
like.
I've heard that before, actually. I had one gentleman say, you know, you have all these people that say, I really wish I could see a UFO and meet an alien. Just be careful what you
That's
wish
what I
for.
tell them. I said, once, you know, they're in contact with you, you may not be able to get rid of them. I was in one group.
Now, do you believe that you have any type of implants, or is it just a mental telepathy type of tracking with you?
As far as I know, there's been no implants, and it's just all been mental telepathy with me. And it's weird because I was used to just seeing the, you know, the flying, you know, the spacecraft that look like saucers and
Right.
everything. And this past July 4th, where I live, the fireworks display is like 4 miles from where I am, from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened up my window. I had the blinds open to see if there are a lot of people on the street. And what did I see? A spacecraft. Not that far from my window.
Let's end it right there. Let's reset. We're at 18
Okay.
minutes, and then we're going to expand from there, okay?